Hey there and welcome back to our channel. My name is Shell and I am the host of our DID system. So we had to travel over the holidays and our birthday. Originally we were going to vlog our entire weekend, but we got sick and it became too much to juggle filming and everything else that was going on. So I thought instead that I would talk about what it's like to travel with DID. Now the trip out wasn't too bad. I did think that I had fronted the entire time, but I realized later that I don't remember our layover, so I'm guessing somebody else was out during that time. Other than that, things went smoothly, which I'm grateful for since we were traveling with our son. Now, traveling both with DID and an autistic son requires a lot of planning and preparation. For myself, I needed grounding tools available. I try to have stimming toys and a stuffed animal or two. The littles rarely ever front when we're traveling, but we like to have a plan in place in case they do. The entire system knows that if a little gets to the front, somebody else needs to get to the front to be with them. We also pack things to do on the plane, which this time included our phone and charger and a couple of books. I also brought our notebook in case somebody wanted to write or draw in it. For our son, we have to make sure his headphones and phone are fully charged, and we bring the charger to plug in during our layovers. I always anticipate paying for Wi-Fi on the flight, so he has access to his games and videos. We also always have at least 2 stuffed animals for him. Also, I make sure to buy snacks and a drink before we get on the plane. This is all to make sure that he is as comfortable as possible while we are flying. We do have the benefit of the fact that he has been flying since he was 3 months old and has taken a trip by plane at least once a year, almost every year. And so he's a veteran at traveling, and that is definitely helpful. We also try to have snacks for ourselves. We have a gluten intolerance, so we can't usually eat the snacks that the plane provides. We do use gluten pills, but we can't use them every day. We make sure to bring them on the plane so that we can eat something during our layover, since the airport rarely has gluten-free options. The pills don't get rid of all the symptoms, but it does at least make sure we can stay functioning. The one problem with our flights out was that we were getting a cold, which means our nose was stuffed, which means added pressure during landing. We ended up having to take Advil for the tear-inducing earache that we got. Oh yeah, we also travel with Advil because not only do we have chronic pain, but you never know when a switch headache is going to make an ugly appearance. We've traveled a lot, so we try to make the process as smooth as possible. We tie our shoes in a way that we can easily pull them off and put them back on. We use backpacks for our carry-on luggage and don't use a purse. We make sure our phone, wallet, and ID are easily accessible. We don't wear any jewelry or belts that we will have to take off during security. We also dress comfortably. We are not the ones trying to look cute in the airport. We travel in leggings, a sports bra, a t-shirt, and a hoodie, or a jacket if we're traveling to a colder climate. We want to feel as comfortable and unrestricted as possible. We also rarely wear makeup when traveling. We make sure to pack all our prescriptions in our carry-on. If nothing else, always put your medications in your carry-on. Don't pack it in your luggage. This becomes important later on in our travels. So like I said, the flight went out smoothly. We got in only slightly later than we were supposed to, and luckily I had thought ahead and had asked the person picking us up to pick food up before they came to the airport, because I knew by the time we landed that everything would be closed. Our weekend went pretty well. We spent Friday with our friends and celebrated a late birthday dinner because we had spent our birthday on the plane. We went out with our friends later that night, and it was the first time we'd been dancing in a long time. So I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to do that. I can't guarantee who all was out during that time. I know at least Angel was out, and we hardly ever go out without Veronica making an appearance. But I am not entirely sure who was fronting. But hopefully everybody was able to have a good time. Now, the next afternoon, we went over to spend some time with our son. This trip was to drop him off with his dad because it's his dad's turn to have him for Christmas. So we did the gifts from us on Saturday because we weren't going to be there on Christmas Day. Now, I've since learned that lesson. Ever since I've been working, I try to take my birthday week off. Not only does it allow me to celebrate my birthday, but it gives me time to prep before Christmas Day. The one year I took the week of Christmas off, I was so stressed because I didn't have the prep time. We're going to have to change that in the future. Now, on the years we have our son for Christmas, we can take our birthday week off. But going forward, the years my son spends with his dad, we're going to take the week of Christmas off so that we can spend Christmas Day with our son. It was really hard to leave him on Saturday, and he was incredibly upset. The reason we were leaving before Christmas is because we didn't want to travel on Christmas Day, and we had to be back for work for December 26th. So the plan was to fly out on Christmas Eve. Then Christmas Eve came. Going through security wasn't a problem. It was a breeze, even though I had been stressed that it was going to be super busy because it was Christmas Eve. I guess that's the benefit of going out of a smaller airport. The problem came once I reached my gate. I had to travel from New York to California, which almost always means I travel through Chicago. And if you were watching the American news that morning, you might know that the Chicago airport shut down due to dense fog. So we watched as our flight got delayed and delayed and delayed. Finally, we went to the gate agent because while our connecting flight wasn't going to leave on time, we had no guarantee that it wouldn't leave before we got to Chicago. So we had to reroute. Then the flight continued to be delayed and we had to reroute again. At this point, we were starting to panic a bit and started rapid switching while standing in line to change our flight. We used all of the tools that we had at our disposal when it comes to rapid switching. And finally, Brittany was able to take the front and handle our plane change. Then she took us to the airport bar and had a glass of wine. We finished our glass just in time to board our flight to Chicago. We landed in Chicago. We had plenty of time before our connecting flight. So we found a place to eat after a large discussion about where and what we would eat. The system was being really loud, a lot louder than usual, which was probably because of all the stress. V was fronting at the time and did an excellent job of fielding all the comments coming from within and getting us some food. We found our way to our gate and oh my gosh, the gates were beyond crowded. There were lines at every gate because of the travel issues. All the morning flights had been delayed, which means the afternoon flights were then delayed. So we stood at this overbloated gate sitting on the floor when we could do so without being tripped over. Luckily, Amy was fronting at the time and she kept us from becoming overstimulated and claustrophobic. She continued reading one of our books and we discovered that this particular series is apparently a positive trigger for her. So she was happy in her own little fairy bubble. And then our connecting flight got delayed. Then our plane was trying to get to the gate at the same time as a different plane, and we had to wait and see who was going to get dibs. In the end, neither one of them made it to that gate, and there was a very pissed off terminal. We heard from some people that they had been sitting on the runway for over an hour before they were able to get off their plane. Now, throughout this journey, we were keeping our sister updated with our flight status because she was supposed to pick us up. Originally, we were supposed to land around 12:30 and we're going to treat our sister to lunch. By now, we were just hoping to make it in by midnight. Eventually, they announced the gate change for our connecting flight. Then it continued to get delayed. And then the worst possible news, they canceled our flight. So we were stranded in Chicago on Christmas Eve. At this point, I was fronting again and the stress of everything finally sank in. I sat on the airport floor and just cried. Finally, I was able to get up and I told everyone in the system to shut up because they were still being incredibly loud. And I got in line to figure out how to get home for Christmas. As I was standing in line, I could see our plane sitting on the runway. I cannot express how frustrating it is to have your flight canceled only to see an empty plane sitting at the gate. Luckily, not only is this not my first time traveling, it's also not my first time getting a flight canceled. Now, it's never happened during a layover before. So I got on the phone with the airline while standing in line. I was halfway through the line when I hung up with that airline and had a flight secured for the next afternoon. I was supposed to land at 8:30 p.m., which meant I was going to completely miss Christmas. So I continued to stand in line, sobbing because I was going to spend Christmas alone in an airport when I had tried so hard to be home by Christmas. Luckily, at this point, my friend called and was able to take my mind off the situation. So why did we stay in line even though we had a flight secured? Two things. I wanted to see if I could get on standby for an earlier flight, and I wanted to see if they would comp a hotel. They didn't. I was able to get an earlier flight into a different airport, leaving at 7:45 in the morning. So I decided against getting a hotel, which would end up being a good thing because we heard that security the next morning was wild. At this point, we got a phone call from the airport in California saying our luggage was there. Yeah, somehow our luggage had made it to California, even though we hadn't. I don't understand. I'm still not entirely sure how that happened. By the time we got through the line, all the restaurants and stores in the airport were closed. Luckily, we had bought a cheese and fruit platter for our flight, so we had that for dinner before trying to figure out how we would sleep in an airport. Luckily, we had our meds in our carry-on, so we were able to take our medication. The only thing we didn't take was our Seroquel because I didn't trust falling into a Seroquel-induced sleep while at the airport. Unfortunately, that meant we didn't get much sleep. At one point, I moved from the chairs to the floor and got about 2 hours of sleep. Now, I'm happy to say that all our flights went smoothly the next day, and we made it home in time to take a shower before heading over for Christmas dinner. We were exhausted, we were done, but we were home. It did teach me a lot of things about our system, though. For one thing, I found out there's a lot more fragments than I had originally thought. I also realized just how loud the system can get and how difficult it can be to manage through that noise. When other people are chattering, it tends to kind of fade into the background for me because I am so used to it. I've had it all my life. And so it just becomes stuff that I don't pay attention to. But they were so loud while we were traveling that it was incredibly difficult to do the things we needed to do because everybody had their own opinions and everybody was hearing everybody's opinions. I did also learn that we can get through rapid switching to do the things that need to be done. And I learned that Amy is a trooper when it comes to crowds. I can honestly say this was the worst travel experience I have ever had. I can also say that traveling with DID is difficult. It's difficult, but it's not impossible. If you have any travel stories that you would like to share, leave them below in the comments. If you have any questions about any of the details of what we talked about, please feel free to ask in the comments as well. And until next time, take care and stay well.